This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 233 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. A few things first. First off, I want to apologize for last night. We were supposed to have Salicot on the show, but I had a little bit of an outage with my internet, and I could not come on the air. I tried doing a MiFi. Nothing worked. So we are going to reschedule with Sal probably next week. So I apologize for that. But we are live tonight. Maybe all things happen for a reason, right? Maybe things happen for a reason because we are monitoring right now the New York Mets as they are engaged in serious talks with the Milwaukee Brewers on a trade for Freddy Peralta. Now, we've heard names like Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams being a part of a trade, but the Mets are in serious talks. John Heyman posted it. Pat Ragazzo has posted it. Mark Feinsand has posted it, and so has Joel Sherman. We are going to keep our eyes on Twitter as this goes down, and if anything's possible, hopefully it breaks during this show, that the Mets right now are in these talks to possibly trade for one top line impact starter. I don't know if people consider him an ace. I think he's kind of an ace, but definitely an impact starter that they've been talking about in Freddy Peralta. We'll be in on that. But I want to bring on my guest here today, and that is Santos, aka the Baseball Aficionado. You can find him as he content creates on YouTube. He's on Instagram, TikTok, you name it, he's on it. Great content, and I wanted to link up with him and connect as we're going to talk about the Mets. We're going to talk about Luis Robert Jr., and I definitely want to get into the Hall of Fame with Carlos Beltran finally getting his election into the Hall of Fame. Santos, how you doing, my friend? It's good to finally speak to you.
Hey man, it's great to talk to you. Been following your work too, man. You do a great job. You know, you guys do a real good job, you and all your guests as well. So happy to be here.
Let's start right off the bat here because the Mets made the trade last night. Obviously, I was not able to check it out until the morning because I had no internet, but the Mets made the trade for Luis Robert Jr., and they trade Luis Angel Acuna and right-handed pitching prospect Truman Pauly to the Chicago White Sox in that deal. Now, 2025 was not a great season for Luis Robert Jr., although he had a great second half, which is very, very encouraging to see. Finished the season with a .223 batting average, 14 home runs, 53 RBIs, 33 stolen bases, and a .661 OPS. Now, his best season, 2023, All-Star and Silver Slugger, .264 batting average, 30 homers, 80 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, and an .857 OPS. Now, he's an elite center fielder, great defense. He has great range, which is in the 93rd percentile if you look on Baseball Savant. Solid arm value, 63. When you look at his Baseball Savant page, now, especially with hitting, great bat speed, elite, 92nd percentile. Now, what we send over to Chicago White Sox and Luis Angel Acuna last season didn't really get much playing time, at least until you needed defense, right? I mean, he's a very good defensive player. You liked what he brought to the table, but he's a super utility guy right now at this moment in time. And the Mets weren't really going to give him that opportunity with all the infielders that are here now, with getting Bo Bichette, obviously Marcus Semien. Now Brett Beatty takes the role from Jeff McNeil as the kind of super utility guy, and he heads to the Chicago White Sox. Well, he'll get more playing time, and he needs it. He needs to develop. He's only 23 years old, and he'll get his time to develop in the Chicago White Sox system. He hit 4 home runs in one game in the Venezuelan League about a couple of weeks ago, and I wonder if that kind of helped his trade value. Now, the other guy, before I hit the question to you, is this Truman Pauly, 2.08 ERA in 4 innings in Port St. Lucie. So the Mets don't really give up one of their top pitching prospects because there's a ton of them. For you, what did you think of this trade?
First of all, it's funny. So it caught me off guard too. When I couldn't sleep. And it was one of those things where, I was trying, how like you're trying to go to bed, but you're just tossing and turning and you want to unplug, right? So you could go to bed. You got to shut off your brain, right? So you don't want to be hanging around your phone or your tablet or whatever. So
Yeah.
that was one of those. Usually I'll be lurking at night and kind of trying to figure out what's going on before going to bed. Nothing happening. All of a sudden, I wake up in the morning and I get flooded with DMs everywhere. Like, oh, because everybody knows I'm a Met guy. I'm like, oh, Luis Robert, Luis Robert, Luis Robert. Like, and I'm like, okay, who did they get rid of? And I said, you know what? The genius did something well. Because I'll tell you something, just a little backstory. I'm not a Stearns guy. So, but
Fair.
we can get into it another time, right? But or whenever later if you want. But I like the trade. I think it's low risk, high reward. And guess what? If it doesn't work out for 2026, they have that buyout at the end. Luis Angel Acuna didn't fit here. So I think what you said about the 4 home runs is 100%. I remember when that happened. I watched it because I follow winter ball in the Caribbean too. A lot, most of these leagues, and I see it. I said, I'm thinking at the time, it's so crazy. I'm like, trade him now, trade him now, trade him now, because we don't know what he's going to be. And so I'm not convinced that he's a star. I think it's the best move that they've made this off season. Obviously, besides as far as like low, like the most what I would call clever move that they've made, at least to me.
Yeah, it does feel like a move where the Mets potentially could make out really strong here. You got Luis Robert Jr. and you got the option to keep him after next year. He's going to have motivation to finally get on what could possibly be a playoff contending team with the additions of Bo Bichette, Marcus Semien, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver. I know a lot of fans are down on some of the moves that the Mets made, but they, on paper, because right now we're in the offseason, on paper, this team looks a whole lot better. And on Fangraphs, they have them with a high WAR, and the players that they brought in are big time winning players, especially Bo Bichette. We saw what he did in the World Series last season. So this is a move that not only helps Luis Robert Jr. get on what could possibly be a playoff team, but it also allows him not to have to be the most important part of the offense. You got the top of the lineup, right? It's stacked right now. You got Lindor, you got Soto, you got Bichette. You could throw Polanco in there too, because he could hit 26, 27 home runs. So Luis Robert becomes kind of that 4th or 5th option with the potential to be like a top hitter, like what Cespedes was. People keep comparing him. This guy could be Cespedes at his greatest point. So it looks good from there.
Yeah, I agree. I love the move. I was always a Robert fan because, granted, I understand the last 2 seasons have not been good. If you look at his offensive numbers, right, slash line, OPS, high strikeout rate, all that. But you got to understand, and this is the part that fans don't understand usually, right? The White Sox are one of the few franchises right now who are behind on the times when it comes to offensive metrics, when it comes to hitting philosophy, technology, data, right? So I think that all of what the Mets have to offer on that front and a new culture, a change of scenery could benefit Luis Robert. I really do.
Where would you see him best fit in that lineup? Because you have to think, obviously, Lindor 1, possibly Soto moving back up to 2, or they switch back and forth between him and Bo Bichette. But Bo Bichette he feels like a third place hitter to me. And then the rest is kind of, game to how you want it.
I think you can really get creative. I fully expect Luis Robert to be one of those names that, unlike Lindor and Soto, he will be one of those names that moves around. You could see him as high as 3 or 4, depending on who's playing and matchup or how he's playing. I could see him between 6 through 8. I think 6 through 8 is going to be his wheelhouse for the most part, give or take. Obviously, give or take an injury here or there, or if he gets hot, listen, if he works his way up to 5, then we're cooking with something. So
yeah, no, like if he gets himself all the way up to that part of the lineup, then that he's having a good season. And we know what we're going to get from him defensively, right? This is the guy that the Mets needed in center field. As much as I like Tyrone Taylor, He is a, bench piece. He cannot be playing every day. He was exposed last season when he had to play every day, and it hurt for him. I felt bad for him that he had to be exposed that way. He's a great defender, but he should not have been playing every day. Here now, you got maybe the possibility of him platooning maybe to start with a young Carson Bench, or maybe he starts the season in left field and then Carson Bench comes up. But the Mets have put themselves in a good position here with getting an elite center fielder. And then you think about it, you got at second base Marcus Semien, at shortstop Francisco Lindor, and your up the middle defense is pretty solid for guys like Clay Holmes, who is a ground ball pitcher, and a pitcher that we're going to get into a little bit later, Luis Garcia, out of the bullpen. He's another guy that's a ground ball pitcher. So you want to have that defense behind them. Talked about run prevention, David Stearns, and now we know like first and third are kind of like iffy with Polanco and Bo Bichette. We don't know what we're going to get, but at least your up the middle defense is solid with Marcus Semien, Francisco Lindor, and now Luis Robert Jr. Now, after all of that took place, we finally found out where Cody Bellinger is going. And it's obvious that he's going to return to the New York Yankees. Jeff Passan reported it for ESPN. 5-year, $162.5 million deal. He's got opt-outs after years 2 and 3, a $20 million signing bonus, and a full no-trade clause. He wanted a 7-year deal, but the Yankees were not going to have any part of that. So the Yankees kind of got what they wanted. But then, Cody gets a little bit of what he wants when it comes to opt-outs and money. Works out for both teams in the end. And it almost came down to a bidding war between the Mets and the Yankees. But I feel like once this trade was done, they were ready to roll on bringing him back as the Yankees did. Now, I don't really talk too much Yankees on the show, obviously, because this is a Mets show. But the Yankees kind of really needed Cody Bellinger. But it just feels status quo for them. I mean, they're bringing back the same team that they did last year. So I don't know how excited Yankee fans are about that. I wouldn't be too excited because it's now the same offense as last season, and that was just not enough to get them to not even the ALCS.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you bring that up because I was thinking, and this is not trying to throw shade at Yankee fans or whatever, but I mean, I was thinking that they signed Barry Bonds by what I've seen with the reaction on social media. I mean, that goes to show you, I'm like, man, how times have changed. I mean, and granted, I'm not saying there's nothing against Bellinger, but it's like, it's almost as if the Yankees were hinging their entire offseason on the re-signing of Cody Bellinger. And that's the one thing that is very un-Yankee like in years past. And it goes to show you the state of affairs now.
Yeah. I mean, both teams kind of desperately needed him. Yankees just needed him just to have another offensive piece. I mean, if they lost Cody Bellinger, you're talking about Aaron Judge carrying a huge load by himself, and that's a tough task because if he goes down, gets hurt, that offense is going to be putrid without him because he carries that team as much as he can on his back. And then for the Mets, more, I don't know, more necessity, more luxury to have Cody Bellinger at this point. He's versatile. He could play the outfield. He could play first base. And that's what, kind of tuned us into wanting a guy like Cody Bellinger to be on the Mets. So I guess it kind of works out for, both teams right now with us getting Luis Robert Jr. Yeah, I want to talk about Brett Baty as well in this discussion because he kind of becomes like the utility man, like the super utility guy especially with Jeff McNeil being gone and Bo Bichette now being at third base. The Mets wanted Baty to take over and do play third base, second, left field, possibly first base. We're going to see him at now. It's funny because Howie Rose mentioned a comment a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, that 3 years ago, Billy Epler, when he was the general manager, was talking about moving Brett Baty to first base at the time. So maybe that's the future for Brett Baty. We'll see. He could also possibly play left field if you're going to do a platoon with him and Tyrone Taylor until Carson Bench is ready. But the Mets view him as a valuable piece of this roster. I don't know if he could possibly be a part of this Peralta trade and news that's going down. We'll wait and see. how close this is done. Oh, and seems to be done. Jeff Passan has just reported the Mets have acquired all-star right-hander Freddy Peralta in a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. The deal is done. Top prospects Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat are heading to Milwaukee. One big league pitcher will head to the New York Mets. So the deal is done. The Mets got their ace, and it is Freddy Peralta. David Stearns had a busy week this week.
Yeah. No, listen, I've been very critical of David Stearns, and for good reason. I feel when it comes to certain moves, whether I was I was against some move, obviously with Pete and Diaz. I didn't, Nimmo, I wasn't really, I didn't mind that trade as much, but he's definitely made up for it with with this slew of moves. Now, you get a Freddy Peralta all of a sudden at the top of the lineup, at the top of the rotation to lead those young pitchers. And you didn't have to part with, obviously, with McLean, which it seems was the only untouchable there. So good trade. And obviously Jet Williams was kind of, by all accounts, was kind of the luster has come off a little in recent time in the minors. So I think it's a good trade.
Absolutely good trade for the Mets. You mentioned not having to trade Nolan McLean. I also did not want to trade Jonah Tong. I liked his raw ability. I know he wasn't put in the right spot at this moment in time, and it wasn't the right time to bring him in. And he got thrusted in a playoff position with the Mets when he should have been growing in AAA. I think he got like a couple starts in AAA, and then he got thrown up there. Were you okay if they traded a guy like Jonah Tong? I was more okay with Brandon Sproat going and maybe some other guys that we haven't heard of yet. But Jonah Tong, I think that he's just got this raw ability that we should hold on to right now.
I didn't have an issue with it depending on who the prospect was, right? Or I'm sorry, depending on who the player was, right? If he were, let's say, if it was going to be Skubal, I would have, anyone outside of McLean, honestly, I would have been all right with. But in a trade for Peralta, I'm glad we didn't have to get rid of him or didn't have to move him. So I like the move.
Yeah. It's funny, too, because during the press conference today for Bo Bichette, David Stearns was like, yeah, we want to acquire pitching, but there is this possibility and a possible chance that we don't get starting pitching. And I know that sent Met fans up the wall hearing something like that from David Stearns. But he's been kind of on point this offseason. He had a plan. He knew what he wanted to do, and he's kind of landed everything that he said. Run prevention, we'll see, right? Like, we'll wait and see because of what Polanco's going to do at first base, because of what possibly Bo Bichette could do at third. But, if Alex Rodriguez, I'm not trying to compare the two, but Alex Rodriguez made the move from shortstop to third base. Bo Bichette is young enough. Maybe he can do it. We will see. And at the worst, we only have it for 1 year,
Right. I actually would have liked, I think Bichette, if you remember late last year, he played second base really well. Yeah. And so I'm skeptical. Now, I don't know what he's going to be at third, but my first inclination was that for whatever reason in my head, I'm thinking, okay, maybe Semien was going to play third and Bichette would play second. That was kind of my sentiment at first, just because I think Bichette looked really good at second. But again, let's give him let's see what he is at third base before we, kind of write him off at the position.
Yeah, no, I want to see him play third and what he could do. And I think the good thing is that because of the versatility, these guys can move around. Maybe we will see Semien take some reps at third base, or maybe Semien needs a day off. He's up there in age. Maybe to keep him healthy, he gets a rest. Barrett Beatty gets in there at second. Also, the possibility of Bo Bichette getting in there at second. So, I think David Stearns is building this team of not only athletes but guys that can move around the diamond. Whereas in years past, the Mets were saddled with some guys that you couldn't move, right? JD Martinez, strictly DH. Mark Vientos obviously is probably going to be just a DH if he's still on this team at the start of opening day. But Daniel Vogelback, right? Like they had in years past, they were not a versatile team. They were one-trick ponies, and it's nice to see that they can move around the bases. Guys can get rest. Maybe Francisco Lindor doesn't have to play 162 games and can rest his back and not play injured because we don't have a backup shortstop that can not only play defense but hit. So this is good. This is very good for this team.
Yeah, I agree. As far as that portion of it, right? I'm kind of like on the wait and see sort of. I'm really curious to see how this infield is going to play out, especially obviously like you mentioned with Polanco and Bichette, that first base, third base dynamic. Those are very crucial spots. So, the corners, you gotta, you could lose games if you're not making plays in the corners. So let's see how that plays out.
Now, also being thrown into this trade, and I'll put it in the scroll on the bottom, is Tobias Myers, another pitcher from the Milwaukee Brewers, will be coming. I remember him in 2024, kind of lit up the Mets. If you remember, especially in the postseason, he's a guy that lit up the Mets. And I think the Mets still came away winning that game. I think that was game 3, the Jose Quintana game, and they came back to win that game. But Tobias Myers was nasty. I got to check his stats for 2025. And I'll bring those up shortly. But the deal is done. Will Salmon, Jeff Passan, everyone is reporting it at this moment in time. It's everywhere. So, shout out to the Mets getting this deal done and having one heck of a 24-hour times, maybe more than 24 hours. You get the Carlos Beltran news if he's going in the Hall of Fame, which we're going to talk about a little later on in the show. The Mets introduced Bo Bichette. They trade for Luis Robert Jr., and now Freddy Peralta is a New York Met. We'll get into a little bit more of that later. I just want to wrap up this discussion with Brett Baty. Do you think that he can duplicate what he did in the second half of last season when he was one of the better Mets on the field and at the plate?
I think it's very possible. I feel like, late last year, the last couple of months was as consistent as we've ever seen him, especially in particular at the plate, because his defense was never really a liability once he kind of was at third, right? At that point, obviously this year he's going to be moved around a bit. So, but when he settled in at the plate, it was like a different, the approach, the confidence, everything. He was driving the ball to all fields and was really a positive, which got lost in the midst of the collapse, right? The collective collapse of the Mets. But he did really well. And I think he could be a guy who's on the verge of breaking out. But again, it's not a sure thing. So we need to see.
No, it's definitely not. We all thought that Mark Vientos was going to be that sure thing after his breakout, not only during the season, but in the postseason, having one of the best postseasons in Mets history for an offensive player. And he ended up having the sophomore slump. Brett Baty just has not been consistent. Every year he gets sent down because he just cannot get himself going. So we hope that now Brett Baty can finally figure things out. I don't know how it's going to work if he's not playing every day and being a utility guy, but he's young enough to be up to the challenge. And all we can hope for is that he, comes through in that spot that, Jeff McNeil has had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, and no doubt. And usually, obviously, that role is better suited for a veteran. But we know with Stearns, Stearns had to get rid of McNeil, like for a multitude of reasons. He was the one guy who I think everyone collectively believed, right, that, okay, this person, this man cannot be on this team in 2026. And so now let's see if Baty's up for the challenge.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because you said you're not the biggest fan of what David Stearns, or you weren't the biggest fan of David Stearns coming in here. Were you as bothered by the moves that he made of letting go of Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, as well as Jeff McNeil? I think the two for me was Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz. I think he fumbled the Edwin Diaz situation. Pete Alonso, I kind of figured he didn't want. It was more of, fan service that we wanted him back. But I feel like he messed up the Edwin Diaz situation where they could have definitely gotten him back. The other two, Brandon Nimmo had to be traded. I think he wasn't healthy enough to stay on this team and be a huge contributor for the next 5 years. I mean, he's going to end up being a DH at some point. He can't, on those hobbled legs, he can't do it for an entire 5-year span. And we're just talking about playing left field, which is the least taxing of the outfield right there. But what were your thoughts on all those moves and letting these guys go?
So I think like you hit right on it as far as like the Pete thing was not a surprise. Pete was not a surprise. We could, if you read between the lines, you could tell, right? Alonso was not a guy who he liked. We know what happened last off season when at the, what was it, Mets Con or Mets Fan Fest, Fan Fest, excuse me, where the fans voiced their displeasure. So he came back, got a mulligan, and as soon as he had the out, Pete got a contract. He's like, all right, good. I'm not on the hook. He's gone, right? Diaz, to me, was the big surprise. That was the big, huge surprise because, I think the issue there, and again, the contract terms, if you look at it, they're not terrible terms. I think when you consider Diaz's body of work, the issue I had was the lack of what they call the lack of rapport, or what appeared to be a lack of bedside manner with superstars. That looks like it could be a thing. And that's where I worry about a person like Stearns. Not that he doesn't know what he's doing on a baseball level. He's very analytical. He's very nuts and bolts, very technical. I get all that, fine. But you got to also remember that these are human beings. And I worry with Stearns sometimes that he falls in love with the numbers too much, to the point where he thinks everybody's just a puzzle piece. Everybody's interchangeable. And I feel like he loses those interpersonal skills and relationships that you got to have with certain players. I felt like Diaz, especially, and even to another degree, Alonso, were part of that. I feel like those were played. Now, did they win a World Series before? Did they, we're not breaking up the 96 Yankees or whatever, or that's not what it is. But I think that those were big blows at the time. And now we're kind of like looking to see what it is now when they play.
Before David Stearns got here, there was always this, feeling that maybe this is not the best destination to come to, right? You got the team in the Bronx, the winningest franchise in baseball. You got other teams like the Dodgers and what they've done, San Diego. People want to go, St. Louis, winning organizations. The Mets haven't been the winningest organization. They've only made the playoffs, twice every decade. Not a lot, especially for a team that has the payroll that the Mets have, and now with the owner that they have. And 2024 felt like it changed everything, right? Making it to the postseason, then getting Juan Soto. It felt like this team was on the right track to now bringing in the players that need to come here. And, obviously Steve Cohen and Alex Cohen have done everything with the community and making the players feel at home with their families. And it just felt like everything was coming into place. And then last year happened. Well, everything that took place in that collapse to end the season, and it felt like we were back at square one again.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that was the most deflating thing. Was seeing it reminded me, last season reminded me of like all the other late season collapses combined. Like it really did. Because it's it was typical, right? One of those, Mets get off to a fast start and the air keeps coming out of the balloon at the end. Like it was one of those situations where as a fan, the only difference this year is that the collapse came way earlier. It wasn't like in the 2007 collapse, right? Or even the 08 collapse. Like this was one of those that it was a slow death. Like you're bleeding out for like 3 months. you know you're gonna die, and then when it finally happens, it's like, oh, it's done. So
yeah,
that's what I felt like.
It did, and it's crazy. I said all off season because you see on social media the Met fans getting frustrated, and I'm trying to preach and practice patience. Let me see how this team gets at spring training. Obviously, now it's a little bit deeper because some of these free agents don't sign until 2-3 weeks into spring training. It's like, okay, let me
Oh
wait
my
until
goodness. Yeah.
opening day and see where we're at and where this roster is. So, the fact that they were able to do three huge moves in the last week kind of changed the dynamic of this team to now we're talking about a contender now with the addition of Freddy Peralta. It's crazy how it changes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and again, I've been very critical of Stearns um, over the last whatever several months, but I have to give him credit for how he's pivoted. Um, Obviously, the results will be the results. That's where, right? It's a results based industry, right? Obviously, fans want to see wins and they want to see how this team comes together. But on the surface, this has been a nice pivot, and he's gone in there and he's addressed some needs that were there. I would have liked to have had another power bat, not a star, just another guy. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. But again, the Mets have the prospect capital. Should they be in contention during the at the trading deadline, then they can make a move.
Yeah, now it looks like this team is pretty much set at this
Yep.
moment in time. Outside of any other type of trade, it seemed like they were set once they got Robert Jr. to have that lineup the way it is. It seems like they're now set with the rotation. They possibly can add another bullpen piece outside of what they did with Luis Garcia earlier on today, which obviously we got to talk about that as well. But it seems like they're kind of set with this team getting ready to go into spring training here. Now we're gonna get a little bit deeper into this trade that just went down probably about 15 minutes ago, but we have 676 people in the room right now, a part of this live stream. Appreciate every single one of you for being a part of the Subway to Shea podcast tonight with myself and Santos, the baseball aficionado. Make sure you're checking him out on all of the social media platforms, especially YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and he's as well on X. Make sure you're checking him out. But shout out to everyone in the chat that's a part of this show tonight. We got Brad, Green Machine, Barnes family in here, Mr. Starquest in the chat as well. I know my good friend Carlos Ramos is in here. What's good? 829 Strike Blitz, Ruben Tybee, everybody that's in the chat. Appreciate you. Let's get to some of the comments as well that are in the chat. I know C Carrera 951 is struggling with the fact that this trade has happened. You got to check it out because everyone is posting it now. Now it's been official for now what is probably the last 10 minutes. If you haven't seen or heard the news, the Mets have traded for right-handed pitcher Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers, which I think is a nice little addition to that trade. They send Jet Williams as well as Brandon Sproat in the deal. Those are top 10 prospects in the Mets organization right now. Brandon Sproat kind of dropped a little bit with the rise of Nolan McLean as well as Jonah Tong, and the Mets still secure Jonah Tong and Nolan McLean. And I'm looking at, I guess, SNY's graphic of the Mets 2025 or 2026 rotation options. Freddy Peralta, Nolan McLean, your 1-2 punch right there. The Mets needed a guy. They needed an impact starter, not only to kind of not put so much stress and Nolan McLean can handle it, but you need a guy. You need a veteran presence. You need a bulldog in there. Freddy Peralta is going to provide that for you. Obviously, David Peterson, a part of the rotation still. Sean Manaea, Clay Holmes. And if Kodai Senga can stay healthy, I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
I know it's an if, but Kodai Senga, when healthy, is a top 3 pitcher.
yeah, I agree with you. Kodai Senga is going to be yeah, you could make the argument Kodai and Manaea are those guys that if they're right, watch out. This rotation could be scary. I think the upside on this rotation now, with obviously with the acquisition of a Freddy Peralta, is now the ceiling because is higher because now you kind of are able to set everybody into their slot. where they should be realistically, right? Mania was never a true ace. I think Mania was just, his injuries just really kind of screwed with him last year. He wasn't able to quite find his footing. I do expect Sean Mania to bounce back. Kodai is the one who, like, tantalizing talent. Real, if he can just get away from these weird injuries. Remember when he got hurt at first base? Like
Yeah,
it
the
was like
throw to
it was
first.
like the weakest injury I've ever seen. I'm sorry, like I don't mean it. I mean, it was a terrible injury. It was just like I'm like, really, like, how'd you get hurt off of that? But you know what? If he's him and Mania, if those guys could stay healthy, oh my goodness, we're looking at something here. So
Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at Freddy Peralta's stats here. Last season, 17-6, 2.70 ERA in 33 games started. He had 204 strikeouts in 176 and 2/3 innings pitched. He's been solid his whole career, 70-42, 3.59 ERA. This is a guy that David Stearns helped bring up in that Milwaukee rotation with guys like Corbin Burns as well. So, they know each other. And that's probably a big help to this whole situation.
yeah, familiarity is key, especially when you're dealing with pitching. I think pitching, especially in any situation, right, regardless of position, but I think especially with pitchers, who are of that age, who you were able to see in their, I guess, somewhat in their infancy or in the beginning stages of their development. I think it totally, it's a key. It's a key thing, and it can't hurt. So, yep.
Tobias Myers, I want to get into real quick because Strike Blitz is saying he's such a great, amazing get here. Dude has control until 2031, and he has better stuff than Sproat. Myers will be the closer of the future. And I think this is a good, addition as well, because obviously we don't know if Freddy Peralta is going to sign a contract extension. I know the Mets have a better shot of signing a contract extension with him because he's not with Scott Boras. And there's been talks about Freddy Peralta wanting to sign or being, interested in signing a contract extension earlier on and not getting to free agency. We know with Tariq Skubal, if the Mets would have gave up 5 or 6 prospects, he's going to free agency. And there's a big chance he'll go to the Dodgers and they'll defer like all the money and it'll be just a waste to ruin the Mets farm system. But this
Too risky. That was too risky.
Way too risky. Yeah.
Because even as great as he is, and he's tremendous, obviously he's top 2 pitcher in the game. But when you have a guy like that, plus you don't know if he's going to sign, plus you got to give up the moon for him. It's not worth it. I think the Mets strategy was correct. I think it was the right way.
Tobias Myers 1-2, 3.55 ERA last season in 22 games, 50 and 2/3 innings pitched. He started 6 of them, so most of that came out of the bullpen. That's where, talk about him possibly being a closer. I just remember him, ripping the Mets to shreds in the 2024 season. So happy he's a part of our team now and not on their team anymore. C Carrera 951 says, Yeah, you don't want to face them anymore. It's just like some players you just don't want to see again, and I'm glad that we get one of those players on our team. C Career 951 says Dodgers, Mets, Blue Jays, Orioles best offseason moves of 25. As the smoke clears, Stearns is definitely new to the baseball side of business. He ain't slow though. Strike Blitz saying Mets aren't done. They need a game 2 starter now for the playoffs, and Valdez a realistic get here. I would tend to agree with this if the price is right. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, and I did put this down in my stats here or in my notes, is he comes with a qualifying offer. He comes with that draft pick. That's the problem. And now after getting rid of Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat, do the Mets want to lose more draft capital? Because already they're set to lose their 2nd and 5th highest selections in this year's draft, plus $1 million from their international bonus pool for the upcoming signing period because they signed Bo Bichette. On top of that, they would lose their 3rd and 6th highest pick. So it's hard to see them signing Framber Valdez or a guy like Zach Gallen, the last 2 pitchers left, with a qualifying offer attached to them.
No. They don't, at this point, they don't have to. They don't have to, especially with all that Framber um has pitched throughout the years. He's one of those signings who would scare me. Being honest, it's not that he hasn't had a good career. He has, but I feel like we've seen the best of him already. And Framber doesn't seem like, despite, you remember when the offseason started, there
Yeah.
were all these rumors about, Mets are favorites for Framber. I never believed it. Not one time. I never believed it. And so I just, he doesn't profile as the kind of pitcher for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, we know what he did when he showed up as catcher, for a team that had clubhouse issues, you
Yeah.
know, I don't think that would be the right get but besides the qualifying offer and the picks and all that, no.
Yeah, it is kind of a tough sell. That's one of the things that you got to think about too. Whether there is clubhouse issues or not, the fact that we have to talk about it means that there's something is happening, and to add another guy that could possibly bring upheaval in there, it's probably something you don't want. As talented
No.
as Framber Valdez is, I think that this is a better move, even though we give up Jet Williams as well as Brandon Sproat. I know G Money Stack's not a fan of losing those two guys, but I think the fact that the rise of guys like Carson Bench, AJ Ewing, and Jacob Reimer kind of made Jet Williams expendable. I mean, Jacob Reimer just came out as the top third base prospect, not top, the number 2 third base prospect in all of MILB or minor league baseball. I think that leads to these guys becoming expendable, and that's something that the Mets are going to try to accomplish. And people complain, why are the Mets keep drafting shortstops? Why do they keep drafting? This is the reason, right? Like,
Right.
not all of them are going to
Right.
play for the Mets. Not all of them are going to play shortstop.
No.
And things like
No.
this happen where trades happen, and it makes guys like Luis Angel Acuna and Jet Williams expendable.
Yeah, I think this was obviously that's capital, right?
Exactly.
In baseball, it's capital, man. Like most of these prospects, people don't understand. Not only the fact that most of these prospects don't pan out, most of these prospects don't even finish or debut in your organization, right? Most of these prospects are similar to a raffle or a lottery ticket, where the thought and the idea of them possibly being great is the intriguing part. And
Yeah.
that's where, whether it's for your club or for another club.
Interesting comment from Strike Blitz here. We talked a little bit about what the possible rotation looks like. I mentioned the name, obviously, Freddy Peralta, Nolan McLean, probably locks to be in the rotation, absolutely. David Peterson and Minaya probably going to fight for a spot in the rotation. We know David Peterson can pitch out of the bullpen, so that's something to keep in mind. Clay Holmes as well, same thing. Kodai Senga will probably be in the rotation as well. One name that hasn't been talked about, especially when it comes to guys in the minors, is Christian Scott. Strike Blitz started off the conversation about Christian Scott. Maureen says he thinks he might be in the bullpen. That's another name, right? Like, that's another body, another name. We've seen him. We see what could be for Christian Scott, obviously coming off of the Tommy John surgery, but that's another name that the Mets can now put in their back pocket, knowing that they have Jonah Tong, Christian Scott, Jack Weniger, Jonathan Santucci. There's so many names that this team has developed now, that this farm, and like you said, whether they play on this team or not, you now have depth if they stay on this team, and you have capital if you want to trade them.
That's right. Yeah, no, it bodes well for them, and I think I'm excited to see the pitching depth that we still have, or that the Mets still have. So it's good to see.
John C _90 says, question, do you honestly believe this team can now beat the Dodgers in a 3, 5, or 7 game series? I mean, they're another animal, right? The Dodgers are just a completely another animal. I mean, in a 3 game series, things are a little bit different because luck can sway, sometimes. Obviously, as the series get deeper, and we saw in 2024 how the Mets, the deeper they got, the tired they got, and they kind of fell apart, and the Dodgers just turned apart. Look, I'm not saying that the Mets are better than the Dodgers now that they got Freddy Peralta, I mean, they can go now and trade Tariq Skubal and make themselves even more of a super team.
Oh my
But
God.
at least they can get to the postseason. At least they have that on paper that they can get to the postseason, and we'll see what they can do. What are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think, see, what people forget, yes, the Dodgers won the World Series last year. They could have lost that World Series.
Yeah.
And right, and this was one of the weaker iterations of this Dodger team. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to be better this year. Obviously, they've made big moves. They're going for it again. But a lot can change. Guys get injured. Guys have regression in their statistics, um different things happen. Like you got a couple older guys there, Kike's coming off of an injury. He's I think he's going to miss part of the beginning of the year. Mookie Betts is another year older. Freddie Freeman is another year older. What is Andy Pajes? Andy Pajes has showed promise, but they've got a lot of stars sprinkled in there, and I'm not saying that they don't deserve to be favorites, but they're not baseball is not like that. Baseball is not like basketball where, you have these juggernauts at the top and that's it, OKC or whatever. Like, no, baseball, you got to play and see how it works out, So, now to answer his question, do I think that now? No, in either format, 3-game, 1-game, 7-game, 162 game. No, but again, we have to get there. The Mets' goal should be compete with the Phillies, the Braves, the other teams in the NL, and get to that point to have that opportunity to be able to knock off the Dodgers. That's how I look at it.
Maiguez Mets says to either sign a guy like Chris Bassett or Lucas Giolito, I guess for the back end of the rotation. I think the time has passed for Chris Bassett, especially after they made the move for Senga. They should have re-signed him that year that he left. I thought. I know he did not end his season well with the Mets to the final 2 games, but I thought he was just a solid piece of the rotation that held everything down. But I think now, what is he, like 36, 37 at this point in time? And no, Lucas Giolito coming off an injury, maybe take a flyer. But you can't, like, so with some of the deals these pitchers are making, you got to really be careful what you're, giving out to them. And I just don't think that's what's going to happen. You got Ricardo in the chat saying Mania can pitch out of the bullpen as well. Yes, I totally agree with that about Sean Mania, him and David Peterson to help with the lefties in the bullpen that we have with Brooks Raley in there, AJ Minter getting ready to come back. So those guys can be long men, which we desperately need and haven't really had since Trevor Williams was our great long man a couple of years ago. So the Mets really need a guy, especially, you just never know. Injuries happen and you need help with the rotation. You need a guy that's going to be a long man and pitch there. El Mambo 13 saying Zach Gallen is a good fit, buy low, high potential. Yes, but he comes with the qualifying offer and he comes with a draft pick. And do you really want to give up a draft pick for a guy that, has the potential? I like Zach Gallen. It's just at this moment in time, I don't know if that's the right move for him. Green Machine saying this trade is a prime example of how building a strong farm system can lead to a sustainable contender. Some prospects you promote and others you have to acquire pieces. Having depth is huge. And that's a big thing at the very positive of what happened last season, right? There wasn't too many positive, but the biggest positive to come out of last season was the fact that this farm system is now a top 5 farm system in all of baseball. Some say, and I think ESPN said that they were number 1 in all of baseball. So it's great to see the Mets finally build the farm system after years and years and years of watching frustrating minor league baseball and watching this team not be able to develop. They're finally developing these prospects.
Yeah, it is very good to see that. It's refreshing. And again, I've told you, I've been very critical of David Stearns, but the one piece that he's consistent in is throughout his tenure has been building up the farm system, and he's done a really nice job at that part as far as building the farm system.
Now I want to talk about Bo Bichette because they brought in Bo last week, and he had his press conference earlier today, said all the right things. Obviously they were asked him questions about, his opt out. Obviously he has to opt out after next season and the season after that. But to me, if this is a guy that can take off and have a really good season, and we know his resume, this might be a guy worth investing in next season to a more longer term type deal. He's going to be probably the top free agent available if he has a really good season, because you're talking about, I think, Jazz Chisholm Jr. is available. That's probably one of the bigger free agents out there. Bo Bichette, just like Cal Tucker, if he opts out, he could be the biggest free agent out there. I think with what we got from Bo Bichette in his 3 years, $126 million, I think it's a good deal for him. Now, Michael Mayer of Metsmerize posted this, and this was via AP, so I'm glad he got this out here. $40 million signing bonus, $2 million salary this year, $42 million player option for 2027 and 2028. And if he declines either options, he gets a $5 million buyout payable in $1 million installments, which I guess is the deferred thing, July 1st, 2036 to 40. And obviously he's going to play third base. What were your thoughts on them signing Bo Bichette to play third base?
I was surprised. As I had mentioned to you before, I'm like, all right, he's going to play second and Semion's going to play third, because to me, it made more sense. Obviously, Semien is a plus defender, former shortstop. Obviously, both of their natural positions are shortstop. So the natural fit would be that. But obviously, we know now that Bo will be playing third base for the majority of the time. I'm kind of like wait and see as far as the defensive end goes, because he was never a plus defender to begin with. But again, we have to give him a chance. Offensively, I love what he brings to this team. Contact, line drive, high baseball IQ, ferocity, and clutch hitting. He was one of the better hitters with runners in scoring position in 2025 for the Blue Jays. He's got to stay healthy. He's got it. He plays with it like his hair's on fire. He's going to be a natural fit for New York. I definitely can see that. He's clutch. Offensively, I'm good to go with him. He's just got to stay healthy. Let's just see how the transition to third goes. That's the one little question I may have. You're on mute.
I think that the thing that David Stearns said earlier today in the press conference, that the transition from shortstop, for any position, transitioning from shortstop makes you, athletic enough to probably make the transition to either second base or even third base. Different if like, a first base, like an outfielder coming to first base or something like that. Those things don't work. Catcher going to first base is another one that works out. So, we've seen it in the past work, and we hope that this works out for, Bo Bichette and the Mets, and they really will have a nice deal here. I think the big thing for me is his offensive game. And last season, with runners in scoring position, 330 batting average for him, a 904 OPS. That's for his career, but last season, 381 with a 1.053 OPS. We did not have, outside of Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso, no one else was hitting over 300 and probably over 250 with runners in scoring position. How many times we saw this team with the bases loaded and no outs and not being able to get any runs in. Now we have a guy here in Bo Bichette who doesn't back down from the limelight, hits in the clutch, and produces at the clip that he does.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a welcome addition. I mean, we've been, obviously we know we're in the modern analytic era where everything is about launch angle and power. It's such a breath of fresh air to see a guy who puts the bat on the ball, puts the ball in play, line drive guy, high batting average. I mean, it's refreshing to see that. And so I'm looking forward to seeing a guy who actually hits for a batting average on the Mets, because the Mets, like you said, I mean, it's been a long time.
Absolutely. He had a big, he was actually injured through most of the postseason, came back for the World Series. And in those 7 games, had that big home run in game 7, 11 RBIs. I mean, crazy how good Bo Bichette was. And if he could bring that here, he has a great relationship with Marcus Semien. They played together in Toronto, a big help to get him to come to Queens. Now, Keith Rad, Mets radio play-by-play broadcaster, put up these career numbers. And I talked about this last week on my podcast. I wanted to bring them up. This is with runners in scoring position. Bo Bichette, 330. Polanco, 306. Semien, 275. Alonso, 266. Nimmo, 286. McNeil, 286 as well. Very big dip for those guys. And obviously Semien, is the worst out of the 3 because he was injured for one. He's obviously getting up there in age. But you look at with 2 outs, 310 batting average for Bichette, 298 for Polanco, 253 for Semien. You go to Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil in this order, 223 for Pete Alonso. I mean, as great as he was hitting the home runs and stuff, in the big spot, it just wasn't there. 258 for Brandon Nimmo, 273 for McNeil. You got 3 legitimate threats here. If everything plays out right, if they are, pen to paper, they play like the back of their baseball card, this could be a dynamic offense when all is said and done.
It's going to be yes, I agree. There is an upside there. It's going to be a different kind of offense. It's clear that Stearns wanted to build a different kind of offense now. Obviously, with the way he's rebuilt this roster, the lineup, right? In particular, this is going to be a different. There's no way around it. It's going to be more of a line drive, looking to hit better and with runners in scoring position. There will be less power in this lineup, but again, you can still generate runs with doubles and extra base hits. Yes. So it's going to be interesting to see if this team can score more runs in a different way than 2025.
You got Soto, who hits 30 to 40 homers. You got Francisco Lindor, who could hit around 25 to 35 home runs himself. You throw in Bo Bichette, who's in that 20 to 30 range. Polanco, 20 to 30 range. If Mark Vientos can get back to what he was in 2024, you got another. Even in this bad season, I think he was 17 homers, 61 RBIs, and that, he was a big part of the offense when he was on.
Right.
So you're talking about that. Can Francisco Alvarez bounce back? We saw the power that he had. I mean, they can get that power. It's just now this team is not home run or miss, and that's what messed up the offense and why they couldn't score runs. Now they can be frustrating to other teams. They can be like that 2015 Kansas City Royals. Remember how frustrating it was?
Oh my goodness,
in the postseason. Even the Dodgers last year were super frustrating. You got pesky hitters on this team, and it's a little bit change, a little bit different dynamic. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't even go that far back. How about the 2025 Blue Jays?
Yes.
I mean, they were the same way. Now that I think about it, they didn't have a lot of boppers in that lineup. They had a couple, George Springer. Obviously, you have Vlad. Those were the boppers. They didn't have Ernie Clements of the world. Right? So it may be, we'll see.
Alejandro Kirk, right? He was on that team too.
Yeah, he's got pop, but he's a guy who doesn't strike out a lot either. So, yeah.
Green Machine in the chat saying, where we may be lacking in power after letting Alonso walk, we now have guys who put the ball in play and don't strike out. Put the ball in play and good things will happen, right? Like not waiting for the walk, not waiting for the home run hit. He just take that as a strike, and then he's swinging at, something that's into the dugout. So it's nice to see a little bit different dynamic when it comes to this lineup. Duran Rivera saying, last year it was frustrating watching Mets hitters strike out with the bat on their shoulder, and with the new hitting coach and Correa, who is known for getting the best defensively out of players. I'm talking about Kai Correa, who is the new bench coach of the Mets and defensive, guru that the Mets has a question. What happens to Ronnie Mauricio? Will he still be on the team while in AAA? So I think he can start the season in AAA, but he has one option left. So they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with him. Maybe he is a part of this lineup at some point. I don't know. Maybe he's a part of the bench, but they have to, because I think he's either got one option left or he's almost out of options. So we'll see. What are your thoughts on Ronnie Mauricio? Is he someone that you want to hold on to from that group of players, like obviously the baby Mets that are around, or is he a guy that you would consider trading away?
The issue with him is, at first I really thought that he had a lot of potential. I feel, and this is, and you can let me know, let me know what your thoughts are on this, but I feel like ever since the injury, he has not been the same player.
No.
I don't feel that at all. Like, in no capacity, whether it's running, whether it's offensively, defensively. He looks lost. He's gone into these extended slumps. And to top it off, you remember a couple years ago when he got hurt playing in Lidom in Dominican Republic, he was tearing the league up. He won the MVP that year.
Yeah.
He's not even hitting over there. He played a little bit in DR. He didn't hit over there. So I'm concerned about Mauricio, but the issue with him now is that his value is so low. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to ride it out and see what he is, because what are you going to get for him?
Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to be able to get the time to play. It's going to be a Luis Angel Acuna situation all over again, because your utility guy is most likely going to be Brett Beatty. Mark Vientos is going to probably be holding down the DH position at this moment in time. So it's like, where do you play Ronnie Mauricio? He doesn't have a set position. He's probably best at third, although I liked what I saw from him at second with Lindor in 2023. So it's a very tough situation with Ronnie Mauricio and what they're going to decide to do with him. That, like you said, his trade value is low. He has struggled, and I think the big problem is that they called him up. Most like it was probably due to the injury to Mark Vientos at the time. They called him up and he just wasn't ready yet. He wasn't ready. He wasn't 100% healthy. You could tell it on the field. He was very slow at the plate. And towards the end of the season, I don't know if you noticed this, but I think there was a lack of focus from Ronnie Mauricio on the field,
100%.
on the base pass, in crucial spots that we needed, getting on base, he gets picked off, and it looks like he wasn't paying attention. So that was something that I kind of saw in the corner of my eye that is a little concerning about Ronnie Mauricio, but hopefully, with some direction this offseason, he can, stay on task and figure it out. He's got to figure it out.
He looked also like he gave up on some at bats too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which you never want to see. You never want to see in a young player. He looked like he gave up on some at bats, which is concerning.
Peter at _Peter saying I would like Valdez and a Suarez. Are you talking about Ranger Suarez? Because I think he went to Boston. Ranger Suarez signed with Boston. Valdez is still available. I don't think that they'll go after. Oh, Eugenio. Okay, maybe. Okay. I mean, where are you going to play him? I guess he could play first. He could DH, and that means you probably have to trade a Mark Vientos at that point in time.
He's a terrible fielder. You can't. He's a terrible fielder. His metrics are not great at either position, at third or first. He's a good power bat, but he strikes out like 195 times a year. Like, they're already going in a different direction, so I feel like it's pointless to bring him into the fold.
Yeah, and you already got that in Mark Vientos. You don't have to pay much money.
Right.
I know he's got that power threat, but if you're talking about guys going to strike out a lot, doesn't have a position, you got him.
You got him.
Mark Vientos
a lot cheaper too.
on the cheap. Green Machine saying focus solely on hitting. If he can revert back to how he was in 24, he's got raw power and hits to the opposite field regularly. Interesting to see if he bounces back, and that's something we'll be keeping our eye on. Matt A.B. Ibanez from Till Mets Do is a part of the show. If you haven't checked out his show earlier today, make sure you check that out with John Saponaro, as they talked about the Luis Robert Jr. trade, and I'm pretty sure they talked about Freddy Peralta as well. He says, hey, Ant, how about the patience, my brother? We've been talking about in the chat, trying to be as patient as possible with David Stearns and what the moves were for this team. Glad that it actually paid off for the Mets. Now, before we wrap up the show, we've got to get into Carlos Beltran, and he is Hall of Fame bound. Him and Andrew Jones get into the Hall of Fame, and I feel like my childhood induction into the Hall of Fame, as well as the year that Mike Piazza and Ken Griffey Jr. got in, I felt like that was like my childhood all over again, getting to watch. So congratulations to Carlos Beltran and Andrew Jones. Beltran received 84.2% of the vote from the Baseball Writers Association of America, needed only 75%. He gets the 84%. Let's talk about his career. 279 batting average, 435 home runs, 1,587 RBIs, 312 stolen bases, at 837 OPS, and a 70 WAR. For people who love, to talk about WAR, that's a big, if he's helping this team win, I mean, that's a huge part. And he's taking the team to a lot of teams to the postseason. He's went to multiple World Series. Rookie of the Year, 9-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger, 3-time Gold Glover, the Roberto Clemente Humanitarian Award winner, 2017 World Champion with the Houston Astros, which, for some people has the asterisk with the cheating scandal that, I don't know. A lot of people say that he was kind of the scapegoat for that. He was the mastermind for that, but he definitely took the brunt of that whole issue.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, yeah. That baseball has, I guess that's the one issue that baseball has with its Hall of Fame, as opposed to other sports where there is this religious, there's these people who just want to be, baseball, not, holier than thou with this and that and the cheating scandal. And, when you think about it, it takes a lot of people to have an elaborate cheating scandal, right? When it comes to technology and sign stealing and all that stuff that happened in Houston. And to that, I say, the owner got no blame. Like, nothing happens to the owner. You mean to tell me that an owner is not going to know if there's cameras and stuff and all kinds of stuff hooked up to his ballpark? Like, come on. Like, so I don't buy that the owner had no idea. That's nonsense. I believe that the owner was complicit. But that's another story that's past.
Yeah.
Beltran is in there. He well deserved, one of the best switch hitters we've seen. He's top 5 in a lot of offensive statistical categories. You name it, whether it's RBI, whether it's home runs, whether it's career OPS, all that. And so well deserved for Carlos Beltran, one of the more complete.
And his 7 years with the Mets, unfortunately, and let me get it out of the way first. Too many Met fans will still choose to remember Game 7 of the 2006 NLCS and the Adam Wainwright curveball. You, me, everyone in the chat, everyone in that lineup was not touching that.
Nope.
No one was touching that pitch.
No.
That was the nastiest pitch I've ever seen be thrown at home plate. If he swings and misses, maybe there's a different conversation, but because he left the bat on his shoulder, I mean, he got buckled. I would have got buckled. Anyone would have got buckled during that pitch. But I don't want to choose to remember Beltran for that, because in 7 years with the Mets, 280 batting average, 149 homers, 559 RBIs, 100 stolen bases, 869 OPS, and a 31.1 WAR, 5-time All-Star. Finished 4th in MVP voting in 2006. I mean, the guy was a stud. He's one of the best free agent. A lot of people say he was the best free agent signing that the Mets have ever had. Yes. So, I want to choose to remember Carlos Beltran for the contributions that he made to this team. And, it sucks that this team did not make it to the postseason after that. That's not his fault. It's ownership, manager for not doing what they were supposed to do in building around that team. Obviously, when he got hurt and wasn't able to get the surgery on his leg, they tried to mess around with him and his return back to the team. I mean, there was so much stuff going on behind the scenes with that team and the Madoff scandal and all that stuff. So Beltran gets a bad rap for what happens here, but he was one of the best men. You said it. I mean, just look at the stats. He's in top 10 categories for the Mets, some top 5.
Yeah. No, he is. And I mean, not just that, but like among switch hitters of all time. Like you'll see the numbers, like you got Mickey Mantle, Chipper Jones, Eddie Murray, and Beltran. Like, I mean, I would advise everybody to look. You'll see he's there. Like, you know how many switch hitters have played in Major League Baseball? A lot, and he played center field, and he did that for the majority of his career, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, his Mets career, which I believe, he'll go in as a Met. I believe that. Um, that career. Some people said, "Oh, well, he didn't live up to billing." No, go compare his numbers to with Kansas. I did the comparison on my IG. Kansas City versus New York. His Beltran has a higher WAR, higher OPS, higher tons of more home runs, more RBI, and he played about the same amount of time. So that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, he was an absolute stud center field. I'll never forget him going up the hill in Houston for that
Yeah.
one catch. I mean, how many times did he leap and take away home runs in center field? And he'll also go into the Mets Hall of Fame this year. So double duty for him alongside Bobby Valentine and Lee Mazzilli. Um, how do you choose to remember Carlos Beltran? Because we got some comments here. Gabe Lopez saying, people remember the strikeout, but they don't remember he hit over 400 in that NLCS. I mean, he was a stud in that NLCS. He was stud in the 2004. That was his coming out show when he was awesome and had one of the best playoff appearances ever. I mean, he's been to World Series with St. Louis. He went to the World Series, obviously, with Houston and won. He's been such a big part of the WBC, and now he's the general manager for Team Puerto Rico. And he has just been an amazing part. And he works in the Mets organization right now, which is another reason why I kind of hope that his hat gets to be a Met hat. I hope they don't do anything screwy where they're like, oh, let's just make it, there'll be no logo on there. So I hope they don't mess around with that. Green Machine also saying Beltran was a stud, played the game with ease, gracefully patrolling center field, gets bashed for the Wainwright K, but one of, if not the best all-around position players in franchise history. How do you look to remember Carlos Beltran, as a Met and just overall, overall baseball player and his contributions, not only to Major League Baseball, but Porter as well. He's pretty big with his academies and all of that stuff.
So the way I look at it is a couple things. As far as a Met, I would always think of him in 2006. And I'm not as one of the as someone had mentioned, that NLCS where he hit 400. That's he killed the Cardinals. He was destroying the Cardinals in that series. They couldn't get him out.
Yep.
The only time they got him out was in that game was the nastiest, right? The game 7 at Shea, with that nasty pitch. But before that point, they couldn't deal with him. He was killing the Cardinals. I remember they used to have newspapers at that time. I remember seeing the little cartoon and on the sports section where you believe, newspapers, Jesus. They had Beltran, a cartoon of him. I forget what it's called. Something with him killing the birds or something, or cards, whatever. That's one thing. And also his contributions for Puerto Rican baseball. Those things cannot be forgotten. What he's done in Puerto Rico, the academy. He's one of the few players who, until he retired, played in every single World Baseball Classic. He played in 06, he played in 09, played in 2013, played in 2017. So,
and that 17 team made it to the finals as well.
He's one of the best players. I say when it comes to Puerto Rico, you could put him top 5 player from Puerto Rico. You could say top 3 if you really want to. Depending on, some people have him 2, 1, whatever. In my opinion, he's top 5 at least from Puerto Rico.
Sarah Langs posted this. She works at MLB. Puerto Rican Hall of Famers: Roberto Clemente, Carlos Beltran, Orlando Cepeda, Roberto Alomar, Ivan Rodriguez, and Edgar Martinez. That's it.
Yeah, 6. And listen, Puerto Rico hasn't had a lot of players in recent years. Puerto Rico's produced just over 325 or so major leaguers, that's the high. 6 major leaguers, that's the highest percentage. When you compare that to, Venezuela, which has produced over 500 major leaguers, Dominican Republic, 900 and change, almost 1,000 major leaguers, Cuba, same amount as us, about 325 or so. Puerto Rico's percentage of producing Hall of Famers is high relative to its output.
Well, Green Machine posted, and one day Francisco Lindor. So hopefully we'll see Francisco Lindor be another Puerto Rican in the Hall of Fame. And you even posted this earlier today, Latino Hall of Famers by nation. Puerto Rico, obviously you mentioned 6. Right. Cuba also has 6, Dominican Republic 5, Panama 2, Venezuela 1. I want to also mention David Wright real quick because his status on the ballot went up, actually. He went from 8.1% to 14.8%. Now, I know, like, he is not technically what you would deem as a Hall of Famer. The problem is when you're telling me that Jimmy Rollins or Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer, I tend to now have to put, David Wright somewhat in that status.
What's funny, as you were saying it, I was thinking it in my head. I swear to you. And I'll say this, and this is gonna sound crazy. I understand Chase Utley was very popular. If you just look at WAR, right? Chase Utley has the higher WAR. Out of all those Phillies guys, like Jimmy Rollins to me is the closest to a Hall of Famer. That's to me. I know he doesn't have a 60 plus WAR, whatever, the metrics, obviously, or 55 plus WAR. But I just by the eye test and by following his career, look at his accumulated numbers, look at the MVP, look at stolen bases as a switch hitting shortstop. Jimmy Rollins is more a Hall of Famer than any of them.
And the
that's
thing
to
too,
me.
you mentioned Jimmy Rollins Hall of Fame. I mean, Jimmy Rollins MVP. He only wins that because the Mets collapsed. That was David Wright's best career year. I mean, he was
by a mile.
Unbelievable. Unstoppable if you look at the stats. And Jimmy Rollins wins it. I mean, obviously he helps lead the team and he wins the MVP for the Phillies. But, if you think that he is a Hall of Famer, then would you also agree that David Wright is, or is he not to you a Hall of Famer?
So the way I grade Hall of Famers now, let's be clear. I don't think any of the three are. The three being Chase Utley, Rollins, and Wright. But just looking at the career numbers, the way they finished, not without any what ifs, I think out of the three, Rollins with the finished career is more of a Hall of Famer to me. However, Wright had the higher peak than the three of them. He was the most. He was more like, oh my God, that guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. So unfortunately, the injuries, and we know what happened with him. But just so to give you the answer, none of them. If I had a vote, I would not vote for either of the three. But if one of them was a Hall of Famer to me, it would be Jimmy Rollins, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Were you okay with Andrew Jones getting into the Hall of Fame?
I am because the way we evaluate these things now. Obviously, I don't have a vote, but I'm talking about we in the baseball community. Not necessarily just voters, right? It's different now. We're not, he has the advanced metrics. Look at his high defensive WAR. Look at the Gold Gloves. He's got the home runs. Look at the OPS. Look at the peak performance. Look at the average per 162. If you look at those, the traditional voters are not going to see it because they're just looking at his 250 something batting average, which I understand that he fell off a cliff once he hit 31 or 30. But at his peak, I could honestly tell you, Andrew Jones may be one of the best 2 or 3 greatest defensive center fielders who has ever lived. And I cannot stand the Braves as a Mets fan, but I have to. Fair is fair.
You knew that anytime a Met hit center field against Andrew Jones, it was going to be caught, and it was effortless. He never had to run down the ball, nothing. I always wondered, like, did he just like fly there? Did he just glide
Yeah,
there?
right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, he is one of the best center fielders, if not, yeah, definitely one of the best center fielders of all time. Green Machine, and this is an interesting point because I do think that Carlos Delgado should be in the Hall of Fame. Guy has over 1,500 RBIs. He has over 400 home runs. Does he have 500 home runs?
No, he fell short
Just short, right?
about 474 or something like that.
Yeah.
Close.
Never was mentioned as a PED guy ever.
No.
Lesser players have been inducted. I don't know why Carlos. See, this is the problem with the baseball writers, is because they pick and choose what rules to follow for the Hall of Fame, whether this guy wasn't good as a media talker, or he was never nice to, like, how is that a metric into how are you going to vote for this person to be a Hall of Famer and not this person? So, like, there's no set rules on how they distinguish which guy is a Hall of Famer or not. To me, Carlos Delgado's a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. He was a prototypical slugger, and he wasn't a slugger in the sense of, well, he's gonna hit 250. He's a prototypical.
He's not Alonso.
He hit he hit 280, which for a guy who hit almost 500 home runs is outstanding. If you compare his peak with Jim Tomei, who was able to hang around because of health, which I love Jim Tomei. He's a great player. They're comparable when you compare peak versus peak, right? Not accumulated stats, because Jim Tomei was able to stick around longer, but they're very similar players when you look at them. And so, to me, Carlos Delgado was a victim of circumstance. He played on a nondescript Blue Jays team. They weren't contenders. First base, at that time, first base was loaded in the American League. So he didn't get a lot of all-star nods because the all-star game is a popularity contest. So it's like the chicken or the egg type of argument. But Delgado's a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that a lot of we can all talk about David Wright and because he only had the short run and all the ifs. There's no ifs to me when it comes to Carlos Delgado and if he should be in the Hall of Fame or not. A couple of final notes here, a little news and happenings, surrounding that team from Queens. The Mets did make another signing today. They signed Luis Garcia, reliever Luis Garcia. Joel Sherman of the New York Post talked about it. 1 year, $1.75 million. 1.25 mil in incentives. That was from Bob Nightingale. He's 38 years old, 3.42 ERA in 58 games pitched last season for the Dodgers, Nationals, and Angels. He has a career 4.07 ERA and 1.42 ERA in the postseason. So that's very helpful if the Mets do get to the postseason. He's more of a ground ball machine type pitcher than a strikeout pitcher, which helps with now us having that up the middle defense that we talked about at the beginning of the show. So that's going to help out. And then one final note here. Congrats to former Mets starting pitcher Jose Quintana, named team captain for Colombia in the 2026 World Baseball Classic. To me, he was a solid Met. I thought he had that bulldog type mentality. Yes, he didn't have the wins because the team was not hitting behind him, but steady, quality starts mostly every start, even especially from coming back from the injury that he did. And he had that amazing September where I think he only gave up 3 runs all of September in 2024, helped the Mets get to the postseason. And then he had a pretty good playoffs against the Brewers in the wild card series and the Phillies in the NLCS. What were your thoughts on Jose Quintana? And obviously this is a guy that, a lot of baseball have a lot of respect for, to be named team captain of Colombia.
I wanted him back on the Mets at the
Me
time.
too.
Yeah, I like him. I'm a fan of Quintana. I love him. I thought he was fine for the Mets, crafty guy, a competitor. Well deserved. Well deserved. One of the better players to come out of Colombia in its history. Obviously Colombia is a soccer right, a soccer country, but
Yeah.
It has produced some pretty good major leaguers. A lot of people don't know that Colombia had its first major leaguer back in 1903. A lot of people don't know that. Colombia debuted in the major leagues before Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Venezuela. So that's just a little tidbit. But But yeah, great, good for him, and it's a tremendous honor.
I talked about this last week. I really love the World Baseball Classic and what has brought to not only to this country, but getting involved and making this kind of a world sport here. And we're finally getting to see, I know there's a lot of major league players in there, but like you mentioned, Colombia gets to showcase their players. Mexico does the same thing. The teams from the Far East, they get to showcase. And now it's making baseball, more interesting for me. I'll be honest. I did not follow much of the Caribbean series, but last year I started watching it. Now, because of the WBC, I want to learn more about all the different leagues out there, and having to follow you as well as some others that have really brought in what it is like to witness baseball from around the world. I really think that's very important, and I'm grateful that you do the things that you do. Let everyone know what you got coming up, what you're working on, and where they can follow you.
Yeah, no, definitely. First of all, appreciate you having me on. Is it's been great. I love to connect with other people like you as well, and I love everything that you guys are doing too. You have an amazing platform, and so I appreciate that. The Baseball Aficionado at Instagram, TikTok, the BB Aficionado, because they didn't let me use more characters, but YouTube. And so what I do is, a lot of Latino baseball content. I talk about sometimes some historical things, also a lot of MLB stuff. I try to sprinkle it in, but a lot of it is centered in, Latino baseball topics, players, managers, discussions. I try to bridge the gap between the Spanish speaking audience and the English speaking audience and tie it in a nice little bow. I have a clothing brand, Baseball Aficionado, which, we sell different Latino inspired baseball hats, tees, hoodies, bbAficionado.com. And
Those sweatshirts are fire, man.
Oh, you
I gotta
see my
get
stuff
myself.
already?
I gotta get a sweatshirt. Those sweatshirts are fire.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. I work hard on it. I love designing. That's like one of my first passions. So I do everything myself. I'm a one-man band. I'm very grateful for the support and for the community, right? The big baseball community
Yeah.
that we're all part of. And so I'm very grateful for people like you and everybody out there as well. So check us out.
Absolutely. Before we end this show, once again, the breaking news that happened at the start of the show, we talked about it. If you haven't seen it, go back, watch on YouTube. If you want to listen to Apple Podcast, Spotify as well. The New York Mets have acquired right-handed pitchers Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers in a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. They are sending Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat to Milwaukee. The Mets have their ace in the hole, their ace of the pitching staff to go along with Nolan McLean and the rest. They keep Jonah Tong. They keep a lot of their top prospects, including Carson Benj. So the Mets seem ready to roll and ready to go as we are only a couple of weeks away from spring training. That wraps up the Subway to Shea podcast. You can follow me on Subway to Shea at Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow me personally at Ant Rivera 86. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you want to listen to the show, it should be up at least by midnight. I would hope to have it up. If not, you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be a part of the conversation live, you're doing that on YouTube, and you can support the Subway to Shea podcast with super chat, super stickers, and super thanks. For Anthony Rivera, for Santos, the baseball aficionado, this has been the Subway to Shea podcast. And always remember, let's go Mets.
Thank you.